Evil doesn't come with a warning. It doesn't arrive screaming or drenched in blood. Sometimes it begins with a single moment so small, so ordinary, that no one notices until it's too late. For Emily Carter, that moment came on a Tuesday afternoon in a quiet office where her kindness was turned against her. Emily was 32, a school counselor in a small Midwestern town. People saw her as dependable, the kind of woman who always had time to listen, always carried burdens that weren't hers, always smiled even when her own heart was heavy. Parents trusted her. Students leaned on her. Friends called her late at night for comfort. And she never said no. But lately, beneath the practiced warmth of her voice and the steady curve of her smile, Emily felt a heaviness she couldn't name. She had begun to wonder if kindness was strength at all, or if it was simply a way for the world to take from her without asking. That Tuesday, she was called into the principal's office. A parent had complained. Apparently, Emily had told a student, "It's okay to feel hurt by your parents. Sometimes adults make mistakes too." To Emily, it was the truth. To the girl, it had been a lifeline. But to the mother, it was an unforgivable insult. Emily expected support. The principal had always praised her for being empathetic, for reaching students in ways teachers couldn't. Instead, he leaned back in his chair, steepled his fingers, and said, "You need to be more careful. We can't afford upset parents." Careful. The word echoed inside her. Not supportive. Not thank you. Just a warning, as though truth was something dangerous to be avoided. She walked down the hallway afterward, her heels clicking against the polished floor, her chest tight. The walls were lined with posters screaming empty promises. Kindness matters. Believe in yourself. Stay positive. For the first time, the slogans looked absurd. Emily wanted to rip them down. That night, she sat alone in her apartment, the glow of a single lamp softening the corners of the room. She poured herself a glass of red wine, but her hand lingered on the stem instead of drinking. Her reflection in the window looked foreign. The same woman, but different somehow. Sharper. Tired. She thought of the girl who had sat in her office with trembling hands, who had found comfort in the words, "It's okay to feel hurt." That moment had mattered. But the principal's words replayed louder in her mind. "Be careful what you say." Her phone buzzed on the table. A message from a friend. "Hey, I really need to talk. Can you call?" Normally, Emily would answer instantly. She would listen, soothe, fix. Tonight, she let the phone keep buzzing. The silence stretched out, heavier and heavier, until it felt like freedom. She leaned back, the untouched wine still glinting beside her, and whispered words that startled her. What if I just stopped? Stopped answering. Stopped helping. Stopped sacrificing herself to carry everyone else's pain. The thought was terrifying. The thought was thrilling. And as the candle flickered against the glass of wine, Emily realized something she had never dared admit before her kindness. The very thing that defined her no longer felt like strength. It felt like weakness. And weakness, she decided, was something she couldn't afford anymore. Emily didn't announce her change. It slipped in quietly, the way shadows stretch across a room as the sun goes down. No one noticed at first. Not her colleagues, not her friends, not even Emily herself. It began with silence. She used to answer texts within minutes. Now she let hours pass, sometimes days. When she finally replied, her words were shorter, less thoughtful, almost hollow. Friends told her she sounded tired. She'd reply with a smiley face and nothing more. At work, the shift was more subtle. She stopped volunteering for extra tasks, stopped staying late when teachers needed someone to talk to. When a colleague asked her to cover a meeting because they knew she wouldn't mind, Emily looked her straight in the eye and said, "I do mind." The other woman had blinked, stunned, as if Emily had spoken in a foreign language. That look of surprise gave Emily an unexpected rush. For the first time in years, she hadn't softened her words, hadn't apologized for saying no. That night she went home and thought about it for hours. It wasn't guilt she felt. It was power. But silence has a way of spreading. The quiet she carved for herself at first as a boundary began to grow into something heavier, something isolating. Her apartment, once a place of rest, now felt cavernous. She ate dinner without music, sat on the couch without turning on the TV, and stared at her phone as it buzzed with calls she ignored. The silence wasn't peace anymore. It was control. One afternoon, Emily sat with a student caught stealing. Normally, she would have spoken softly, guiding the boy to understand why he acted out. Instead, her voice was sharp, almost cold. "Do you know what stealing is?" she asked, her tone even but heavy. The boy shook his head nervously. "It's not about what you take," Emily continued, leaning forward. "It's about showing everyone that you think you deserve something you haven't earned, and people don't forget that." The boy's face went pale. He muttered an apology, eyes wide, before slipping out of her office. Emily sat back, her pulse steady. The satisfaction that curled through her chest scared her, but it also thrilled her. She told herself it was tough love, but deep down she knew it was something darker, the release of bitterness she had swallowed for years. Driving home that evening, she noticed the world differently. Children rode their bikes, families chatted on porches, neighbors waved. It all felt distant, like she was watching from behind glass. She used to love the warmth of her town, the smallness of it. Now, she felt detached, separate, as though she no longer belonged to it. Her phone buzzed on the passenger seat. Another friend, another request for advice. Emily picked it up, stared at the screen, and felt her chest tighten with rage. How many times had she sacrificed her own peace to listen, to soothe, to heal? How many times had she been left empty afterward? With a single swipe, she blocked the number. The rush was immediate. Not relief, but pleasure. A sharp, intoxicating pleasure. She sat in her parked car outside her apartment for nearly 30 minutes, staring at the blocked contact. Her finger hovered over the unblock button more than once. But then she remembered every night she had lain awake after giving too much of herself away. Every time she had cried quietly so no one else would feel guilty. She left the number blocked. Inside, she lit a candle and sat in the dark, the room filled with flickering shadows. Her mind returned to the boy she had spoken to earlier, the fear in his eyes, the way her words had cut deeper than she intended. She thought of her friend, now severed from her life with one swipe, and she smiled. Not because she wanted to hurt them, but because for once she wasn't the one being hurt. For the first time, she felt untouchable. That night, Emily stood in front of her bathroom mirror. The woman staring back looked the same brown hair, same tired eyes, same lines of exhaustion etched across her forehead. And yet, something about her expression was different, stronger, colder. Maybe kindness was never strength, she whispered to her reflection. Maybe it was weakness all along. She turned off the light, the mirror swallowed in darkness, and walked away without a trace of hesitation. Emily told herself she was fine, better, even. For once, she wasn't exhausted from giving herself away. She had space. She had silence. She had control. But control, she would soon learn, has a way of slipping through the cracks. At school, people began to notice. Students still came to her, but the warmth they once felt had cooled. Emily listened, but her patience was thinner, her answers sharper. A girl confessed she was afraid of failing her classes. Instead of soothing her with gentle reassurance, Emily said, "Fear is useless unless you let it push you. Crying about it won't fix anything." The girl's face crumpled, and she nodded quickly, retreating. Emily watched her go, a pang of guilt flickering before it was swallowed by something else relief. She didn't have to carry the girl's pain. She didn't have to drown in it. Colleagues whispered in the teacher's lounge, "She seems different lately, quieter, colder," but no one confronted her. They still respected her too much, or maybe they were too wary of the new edge in her voice. At home, the changes were starker. Emily ignored texts, skipped calls, declined invitations. Her apartment grew darker, emptier. She stopped cooking real meals and lived on takeout containers stacked by the sink. The quiet no longer felt like rest. It felt like a cocoon, and inside it, she was changing. One Friday evening, her closest friend Rachel showed up unannounced. Emily opened the door to see Rachel standing there with wine and takeout, her smile uncertain. "You've been distant," Rachel said gently. I wanted to check on you." Emily stepped aside, and Rachel walked in. They sat at the table, food untouched. Rachel tried to talk about her job, about her boyfriend, but Emily barely responded. She stared at the candle flickering between them, her expression unreadable. Finally, Rachel set down her glass. This isn't like you. You don't answer my calls. You barely text back. What's going on?" Emily looked at her for a long time, something unreadable in her eyes. "Maybe this is who I really am." Rachel blinked. "What do you mean?" "I mean," Emily said slowly, her voice steady. "Maybe I'm tired of always being the one who fixes everything. Maybe I don't want to carry anyone else anymore. Not you, not anyone." The words hit Rachel like a slap. "I never asked you to carry me," she whispered. Emily tilted her head. "Didn't you?" The silence that followed was heavier than the candle smoke. Rachel stood, gathering her things, her hands trembling. "I don't know what's happening to you, Emily, but this isn't you." Emily didn't stop her from leaving. She didn't apologize. She simply watched Rachel walk out, her footsteps echoing down the hallway. When the door clicked shut, Emily exhaled, her chest rising with something that felt disturbingly close to satisfaction. Another tie severed. Another weight lifted. But as the night stretched on, the satisfaction twisted into something sharper. She lay awake, staring at the ceiling, thinking of Rachel's wounded eyes. For years, Emily had defined herself by being needed. Without that role, what was left? The thought unsettled her. At school the following week, she sat in her office staring at a file. It was for a boy who had been skipping classes, his grades collapsing. Normally, she would call him in, talk to him, try to understand. Instead, she closed the file and shoved it aside. She didn't want to understand. She didn't want his problems tangled with hers. But later, she caught him in the hallway, laughing with friends, carefree as if nothing was wrong. Something inside her snapped. She pulled him aside. "You think this is funny? Skipping class, throwing away opportunities other kids would give anything for. You think life will keep giving you chances?" The boy froze, caught between shame and fear. "I am sorry," he stammered. Emily leaned closer, her voice low but sharp. "Sorry doesn't fix wasted time. Sorry doesn't erase failure. If you keep this up, one day you'll realize you've ruined everything and no one will care." He nodded furiously, his eyes wide, before hurrying away. Emily stood there, her pulse racing. She felt powerful, untouchable. Yet beneath the power was something else, a hollowness growing deeper every day. That night, she sat at her table with her journal open, pen in hand. For years, she had filled its pages with encouragements, affirmations, reflections of gratitude. Now, she wrote something different. Kindness is a leash. People pull until you choke. If you cut the leash, you finally breathe. She closed the journal, her hand steady, her mind buzzing. For the first time in her life, Emily felt she was no longer the woman people thought she was. She wasn't the dependable counselor, the supportive friend, the good person. She was something else, something sharper, something stronger. And she wasn't sure she wanted to turn back. Emily no longer recognized the woman in the mirror. The gentle smile she used to wear had hardened into something restrained, controlled. Her eyes, once soft and warm, looked sharper, colder. It wasn't sudden. It was a quiet shift, like water boiling without anyone noticing until the steam began to rise. At school, students still came to her, but the stories no longer moved her. Their tears, once enough to break her heart, now barely stirred her. She listened, she gave practical advice, but her words cut sharper than before. She told one girl who confessed she was being bullied, "People will walk all over you if you let them. Stop being weak." The girl left her office in tears, and Emily didn't flinch. Her colleagues whispered more openly now. Some avoided her, others watched carefully, sensing something was off. But no one confronted her directly. To them, Emily was still the respected counselor, still the woman with a perfect record. They didn't see the shadows growing inside her. At home, the loneliness deepened. Rachel no longer called, and Emily didn't reach out. The silence that once felt like freedom now pressed down on her like a weight. She tried to drown it out with late-night television, but the static noise only made her thoughts louder. One evening, she scrolled through her old photos, smiling with friends, celebrating birthdays, laughing in crowded rooms. She felt nothing. It was as if those moments belonged to someone else, a stranger she used to know. The Emily who cared, who gave, who loved, that Emily was gone. The breaking point came when her neighbor, Mrs. Thompson, knocked on her door. An older woman, frail and kind, she had always adored Emily. She often came by with cookies, small gestures of warmth. That evening she stood there holding a plate of fresh-baked muffins, smiling. "I haven't seen you in a while, dear," she said softly. "Thought you might like these." Emily stared at the muffins, then at the woman. Something snapped in her chest. "Why do you people keep showing up like I owe you something?" she snapped. "I don't need your pity. I don't need your company. Just leave me alone." Mrs. Thompson's smile faltered, her hands trembling as she clutched the plate. I only wanted to be kind." Emily slammed the door without another word. Inside, her heart pounded, her breath sharp. She leaned against the wall, waiting for guilt to crush her, but it didn't. Instead, she felt something else power. The next morning, she walked into school with a composure that unsettled even herself. Students still greeted her, but her gaze made them falter. She moved through the halls with an authority that demanded silence. People no longer came to her office as often. They avoided her eyes, their conversations cut short when she passed. It was what she thought she wanted: distance, peace, control. But the emptiness only deepened. One night, unable to sleep, she opened her journal again. This time she wrote, "Goodness is a mask. I wore it so long I thought it was my skin. But it wasn't. It was just a disguise. And now it's gone." She stared at the words for a long time, her pen resting heavily in her hand. A part of her felt liberated. Another part wondered what she was becoming. The turning point came weeks later when she saw Rachel again by accident at the grocery store. Rachel froze when their eyes met across the aisle. She hesitated, then approached cautiously. "Emily," she said softly, "you look different." Emily tilted her head, her lips curving into the faintest of smiles. "I am different." Rachel studied her, searching for the friend she used to know. "You're scaring me." Emily's smile widened, just slightly. "Good." The single word hung between them like a blade. Rachel shook her head, tears in her eyes, before walking away without another word. Emily stood there, calm, unshaken. For the first time, she didn't feel weak. She didn't feel used. She felt untouchable. But deep down, a question began to form, one she couldn't silence. If she wasn't the kind, gentle woman she used to be, then who was she now? Emily had always been known for her patience, but now silence was her new language. It wasn't the silence of peace, but of control. When people spoke to her, she measured every pause, every quiet stare, and somehow it unsettled them more than words ever could. At school, the students still avoided her office, but not all of them stayed away. A boy named Tyler, quiet and withdrawn, began seeking her out. He was unlike the others. He didn't cry, didn't beg for comfort. He spoke in fragments about anger, about how people deserved to pay for what they did to him. Emily didn't correct him. She didn't soften his edges. She only listened. One afternoon, he said, "Sometimes I imagine what it'd be like if people finally stopped getting away with things. If someone made them pay." Emily met his gaze, her voice calm but sharp. "And what would you do if you had that chance?" Tyler hesitated, his jaw tightening. "I don't know. But I think I'd feel better." For the first time, Emily leaned forward, her voice almost a whisper. "Maybe you would." It was subtle, but Tyler's eyes flickered with something dark, something dangerous. And Emily didn't pull back. She let it grow. At home, the nights felt heavier. She no longer reached for television or music. She sat in the dark, sipping wine, listening to the hum of her refrigerator. Her thoughts became her company, her journal, her confession booth. The words she wrote grew sharper. Kindness kept me small. Kindness made me invisible. Power lives in silence, in control, in fear. She underlined the last word 3 times. The more she leaned into it, the more the world responded. Her colleagues spoke to her with caution, their voices careful. Parents avoided questioning her. Even the principal, who once praised her warmth, now treaded lightly around her. She wasn't just respected anymore, she was feared. One evening, she received an email from Rachel. Short, hesitant. "Emily, I don't know what's happening to you. I'm worried. Please talk to me before you go too far." Emily read the words, her lips curving into a smile that felt foreign on her face. Too far. She thought, "Rachel has no idea how far I've already gone." She didn't reply. She closed the email and poured herself another glass of wine. The following week, Tyler came to her again. His anger had sharpened. "They won't stop. The guys at school, they laugh at me. They think I'm weak." Emily didn't tell him to ignore them. She didn't encourage forgiveness. Instead, she asked, "And what would make them stop?" Tyler clenched his fists. "If they were afraid of me." She leaned back in her chair, her voice steady, deliberate. "Then maybe it's time you let them see who you really are." It wasn't advice, it was permission. And she knew it. Later that night, Emily couldn't shake the image of Tyler's eyes dark, alive with a hunger she recognized. She poured another drink, staring at her reflection in the kitchen window. For the first time, she saw herself clearly, not the gentle counselor, not the woman desperate to be loved, but something else, something harder, sharper. The next day, word spread around school. A fight had broken out. Tyler had finally snapped, leaving one of his bullies bloodied and shaken. The administration scrambled to handle it. Parents screamed. Teachers argued. But Emily stayed calm. When asked about Tyler, she said only, "Sometimes people reach their breaking point." Her colleagues stared at her, unsettled by her calmness. But Emily didn't flinch. Inside, she felt a strange satisfaction. She hadn't lifted a finger, yet her influence had planted the seed, and now it was growing. That night, she returned to her journal. Her handwriting was bold, forceful. Evil doesn't announce itself. It whispers. It waits. And when it speaks, it sounds like freedom. She closed the book and turned off the lights. In the silence, she smiled. Emily no longer doubted herself. The fragile woman who once craved approval, who once tried to heal every broken soul, was gone. What lived in her now was sharper, colder, and terrifyingly sure of itself. At school, the air shifted when she entered a room. Teachers lowered their voices. Students avoided her gaze. Even the principal hesitated before calling her name. She felt it all, every flicker of unease, every nervous glance, and she fed on it. Power didn't come from shouting or demanding respect. It came from silence, from letting others feel the weight of your presence. Tyler returned to her office 2 days after the fight. His lip was split, his knuckles raw, but his eyes glowed with a strange fire. "They don't laugh anymore," he said, almost proudly. Emily studied him, her expression unreadable. "And how does that feel?" He hesitated, then whispered, "Good, like. I'm not nothing anymore." Emily leaned forward, her voice low and deliberate. "That's the thing about fear. It reminds people you matter." Tyler's face hardened as he absorbed her words. He was learning. She could see it. She wasn't just a counselor anymore. She was shaping him, molding him into someone who understood what she had come to believe. Kindness made you weak, but fear made you unforgettable. At home, Emily's nights grew darker, but quieter too. She no longer felt lonely in her silence. She had her journal, her thoughts, her glass of wine. She didn't miss the warmth of old friendships or the comfort of gentle words. Those things were illusions, she decided, fragile shields that cracked the moment the world pressed too hard. Her entries grew more brutal. Kindness builds cages. Fear breaks locks. People don't respect love. They respect what they're afraid to lose. Every word dug her deeper into her conviction. One evening, she received another message from Rachel. This one was longer, more desperate. "Emily, I'm scared for you. You've changed so much. This isn't you. Please don't shut me out. Let me in before you lose yourself completely." Emily stared at the screen. For a brief second, something inside her stirred, a ghost of who she used to be. But she killed it with a single breath. She typed a reply, her fingers steady. "You never really knew me, Rachel. This is who I've always been. You just liked the softer version." She hit send and didn't look back. The next day, she noticed something new. Tyler wasn't the only student who hovered around her office. A few others had started lingering nearby, kids who felt ignored, angry, overlooked. They didn't walk in, not yet, but they looked at her differently. With curiosity, with hunger. It made her think. Maybe her influence could go beyond one boy. Maybe she could create something larger, a quiet force. A circle of those who understood that the world wasn't built on kindness, it was built on control. That thought thrilled her. Weeks passed. Emily spoke less, but her silence said more. She offered no lectures, no warm encouragement. Instead, she planted seeds, questions, not answers, words that lingered, ideas that infected. When one girl cried about being betrayed by her best friend, Emily didn't tell her to forgive. She simply asked, "And what will you do to make sure she never does it again?" When another student complained about teachers treating him unfairly, Emily didn't comfort him. She asked, "Why do you let them?" Her office became something else, not a place of healing, but a place of awakening. Students left unsettled, their thoughts twisted, their pain sharpened. Emily didn't guide them toward peace. She guided them toward power. At night, she began to dream differently. Gone were the dreams of walking through endless halls or comforting broken faces. Now she dreamed of shadows stretching long, of whispers spreading like smoke. In those dreams, she wasn't a counselor. She was something greater, something feared. And when she woke, she carried that feeling with her. The tipping point came on a rainy Thursday. A group of boys who had tormented Tyler cornered him near the gym. But this time, he wasn't alone. 2 other students stood with him, kids Emily had seen lurking near her office. The fight didn't last long. By the end, it wasn't Tyler bleeding. It was the boys who had mocked him. The story spread like wildfire. Rumors flew. Some said Tyler was different now, that he wasn't afraid anymore. Others whispered about the strange pull of Miss Harper, the counselor who didn't speak much, but whose words seemed to stick inside your head. Emily didn't confirm or deny any of it. She didn't need to. The truth was obvious to anyone paying attention. That night, she wrote one line in her journal, her handwriting bold and final. "This is only the beginning." She closed the book, turned off the lights, and let the silence wrap around her like armor. For the first time in her life, Emily didn't feel small. She didn't feel weak. She felt powerful. And she knew she would never go back. The rain hadn't stopped for 3 days. The town felt drowned in gray, its streets slick, its people quieter than usual. But Emily wasn't quiet anymore. She was alive in a way she had never been before. Each morning, she dressed deliberately pressed blouses, dark skirts, subtle makeup. Her reflection was no longer the tired woman she used to see. Her eyes held something sharper now, something that unsettled even her. It wasn't anger. It wasn't sadness. It was certainty. At school, whispers followed her everywhere. They said Tyler wasn't the same boy anymore. They said kids who talked to Ms. Harper came back different, harder, colder, stronger. Some were afraid of her. Some admired her. But all of them felt her. Emily walked down the halls with an unhurried stride, the kind that demanded space without a word. Students moved aside instinctively. Teachers avoided confrontation. Even the principal glanced away when she passed. And she smiled, because this was the power she had always searched for. Tyler visited her office again, this time with 2 other boys. They stood behind him like shadows, their faces set, their silence heavy. Tyler leaned on her desk and spoke without hesitation. "They won't touch us anymore," he said. "Not after what happened." Emily folded her hands, tilting her head slightly. "And what did you learn?" "That no one respects weakness," he said. "Not until you make them afraid." Her smile was small but approving. He understood now. He wasn't just a student anymore. He was proof that her philosophy worked. That night, she didn't drink wine. She didn't need to. She sat at her desk, journal open, pen poised. Her words flowed easily, without hesitation. Monsters aren't born. They're sculpted. Every cruelty, every betrayal, every time kindness fails, it shapes you. Until one day, you realize you're no longer the one bleeding. You're the one holding the knife. She paused, staring at the ink. For the first time, she wrote not with pain, but with pride. The next week, an incident shook the school. A teacher tried to discipline Tyler and his friends after hearing rumors of their fight. But when the confrontation ended, it wasn't the teacher who held control, it was them. They spoke calmly, coldly, with a quiet authority that made the man falter. The entire exchange spread like wildfire across the campus. Emily knew what it meant. Her influence had grown beyond her office walls. It had spread into the halls, into the classrooms. And she didn't stop it. She nurtured it. Rachel sent one last message that weekend. "Emily, I don't know who you've become. You scare me. But if you ever want to find your way back, I'll be here." Emily read it once, then deleted it without replying. She didn't need Rachel's safety net anymore. She wasn't lost. She had found herself. The woman who once patched broken hearts was gone. The woman who rose from those ashes was something else, someone who no longer believed in mending, but in reshaping. Not through kindness, but through control. She wasn't a counselor anymore. She was a catalyst. One Friday afternoon, the sky blackened early with another storm. Students moved quickly to avoid the rain, but Tyler and his group stayed behind in her office. They waited for her, their eyes steady, their silence deliberate. Emily stood before them, her voice calm but edged with steel. "You understand now," she said. "The world doesn't reward goodness. It rewards strength. It rewards fear. And if you want to survive, if you want to matter, you must stop trying to be good. You must become undeniable." Their silence was their agreement. She saw it in their eyes, the hunger, the belief, the readiness. In that moment, Emily realized what she had built. Not just a boy who stopped being a victim, not just a group of students who felt stronger. She had built something much larger, a movement, a mindset, a quiet army forged not from kindness, but from the sharpness of survival. And she felt no guilt. The storm raged outside, thunder shaking the windows. But inside, her voice was steady, her presence unshakable. "You're not children anymore," she whispered. "You're becoming what the world really fears and what it secretly respects." The boys leaned closer, listening as if every word was gospel. For the first time in her life, Emily felt complete. She wasn't pretending. She wasn't wearing a mask. She wasn't breaking anymore. She had already broken, and what remained was unbreakable. She closed her journal one final time that night, leaving a single line written across the page. "This is who I was always meant to be." And with that, Emily Carter, the once kind counselor, fully embraced the darkness she had become. She wasn't good anymore. She was dangerous, and she had no intention of turning back. If Emily's story left you questioning how goodness can twist into something darker, don't stop here. Share this story with someone who loves exploring the psychology of evil. Subscribe for more gripping tales and dive deeper into the hidden corners of the human mind. Darkness is only the beginning. Are you ready to face it?